Today's guests include a rich history with cattle ranching, regenerative agriculture. We're going to talk child nutrition, and we're going to do it with some brands that I know that you have seen and brought into your own home. Welcome to the Produce Moms. This is the podcast where I talk to various people who've made an impact on the fruit and vegetable community. There are so many stories to share that will change the way you look at fresh produce. Trip is the CEO of Grass-Fed Foods. This is a really exciting business that has come together as an umbrella of sorts that's representing two of the most progressive brands from my point of view in meat. So Trip, I want to give you a chance to introduce yourself and tell us a little bit more about Grass-Fed Foods.
Thank you, Lori. I appreciate the time. This has been a long journey for us. I have been trying to help agriculture, farmers and ranchers for a long, long time. And I've been doing this for about 36 years. And it's been across dairy. When we did the Milk Mustache campaign, kind of got me into the whole plight of people that were working the land. And then with more traditional proteins like turkeys and so on. But in the last 20, 25 years, taking smaller brands that were trying to have an impact beyond the plate, to have an impact on people's lives, people that were in rural communities, but also across Main Street America, where families want to eat better, and trying to figure out how to get them those products that they deserve, that they want, and products that they thought were not just nutritionally sound, especially for children, but those that also helped across the planet, across other communities they were never going to get to go to and have a true impact.
The brands that Grass-Fed Foods represents, those are the brands that we want to have this discussion with about regenerative ag. I think there's a ton of misconception. And I know that, Matt, with his 6th generation rancher point of view, we're gonna really dive into regenerative agriculture with him. But I got to bring it up with you too, because it sounds like that was a guiding light for your storied career.
Yeah, it's tied together, Lori. Without folks like Matt and the other ranchers we work with, then this would all be a label, and the label wouldn't mean very much. It's the work they do to take care of the land, take care of the animals, and the people that are involved in that. And then they simply pass that along to the families across the country that say, I really value that. Chefs play an important role in that. Chefs put it on a menu and say, this is something you should try. And they educate. Grocers do that. Progressive grocers do that. And so we've seen that. We've seen it in other claims: pasture raised, antibiotic free, no added hormones, all of those things. Now, sustainability and regenerative agriculture are front and center for lots of reasons. And so doing it with folks like Matt are very important, and brands like Teton and SunFed help that product get across the country and get across the table.
So another one of our amazing guests today is Ashley Finster. She is the CMO of SunFed Ranch, and Ashley and I have had the opportunity to get to know each other pre-show, and it's really, I couldn't believe when I learned more about her history that her and I didn't already know each other. I felt like, but I can tell you one thing's for sure, after knowing Ashley for just a couple weeks now, wow, what a woman to look up to, an absolute pioneer and legend as it relates to agriculture marketing. And Ashley, it is a joy to welcome you to the show today. So very thankful that you're here. Please say hello to our guests and introduce yourself.
Thank you, Lori. You've officially embarrassed me now. And it is very surprising that we didn't know each other, considering I lived near you for so long. So yeah, I'm Ashley Finster. My background for the last, I would say 18 years has been agricultural marketing, or what I like to say is decommoditizing commodities. And prior to that, I was at Deloitte Consulting. So I have a different background for a marketer. I look at things a little differently. I'm pretty analytical, and really want to make sure whatever I do works. My role at SunFed is broader than marketing. So I work a lot with our retailers, do a lot of our trade promotions, pricing, all sorts of things that it's really about anything that contributes to getting the product off the shelf, which in the perimeter is beyond, what some people may view as marketing is my responsibility. And I've been doing that for years for several different brands. Sort of my claim to fame is Cuties. It was a really very tiny brand when I started, and we grew that brand to be quite sizable. And it sort of broke the paradigm with consumer branding around agricultural commodities. It changed the way people viewed the ability to brand a commodity. And so that was sort of where I got my start in this.
And Ashley, we're going to have a standalone episode on that, like how to brand a commodity, because it is, I think a lot of the people tuning into this show, it doesn't matter what point of view they have. If they're working in the supply chain for, fruit, veg, or another sector of ag, or if they are a shopper, that commoditization of fresh food is beyond frustrating, so I look forward to continuing that dialogue, and I know we're going to need a standalone episode on it.
Yes, I'd love to do that with you. But yeah, so just branding commodities. I, like Trip, have, when I was leaving Deloitte, I wanted to work in an industry that was meaningful to me. And I love to cook. I love food. So to me, food was very natural, but then working on products specifically that are healthy for you, good for you, because, marketing can be a force for evil. And maybe evil's a strong word, but it can be a force for bad. And sometimes I am amazed at even what I buy when I go into the grocery store, because I love sugar. Okay. I admit it. And I'm very lured in, and I buy like so much candy, and I'm like, oh, the marketing gimmicks are getting me. But so I have always felt that I wanted to be involved in marketing a product that if people bought more, it was a good thing. And and I think Cuties, definitely for me was about that. But then also I've worked with brands like California Olive Ranch. Again, it's a California agricultural product, or at least it started that way. Now they've expanded to global. But again, if people buy more olive oil, it's not a bad thing. And especially if it's raised, or in California. And then SunFed was the same thing when Matt initially interviewed me. I had always been buying grass-fed beef. So I was already a grass-fed purchaser, but I knew when I met Matt and Chris, the other founder, that I could absolutely do something with the brand, create a story, and really make a splash in the space, and educate consumers through marketing about what we do, and even educating our retailers and explaining to them, there's a place for this on the shelf. And I'm really, really proud of what we have accomplished at SunFed. And it's not easy. But it is doable, which we can talk about, in perhaps the next show. It's hard, but you can do it.
We will absolutely carry on that conversation. I'm going to ask you a question that I also certainly plan to ask Matt. What is regenerative agriculture?
There is a definition out there, which is basically engaging in activities that improve the soil. That you're getting technical, but I think that it's definitely something that, Matt and I always talk about. It's a journey. It's not an end point. Whereas like organic, you sort of get to that certification. Regenerative is constant improvement. And so it's about things that improve the soil, and the result of that is the reversal of climate change. So that's where I think it's like, well, what does improving the soil really do? And you have to understand the whole life cycle and ecosystem, and the way soil sequesters carbon, and the use of ruminant animals to do that, which again, Matt's the real expert here. But to me, it's about improving the soil, which then basically reduces climate change. And that's sort of the link between the two. And I am passionate about regenerative as a mother, as someone who's very concerned about the environment on a personal level. And if everyone did regenerative agriculture, we would have a reduction in not emissions, but a reduction in greenhouse gas, all these things. It would reverse climate change if everyone engaged in it. And I'll give a plug for a great documentary called Kiss the Ground, which is on Netflix. And I highly recommend anyone who's interested in it watch it. It's highly entertaining, which they did an amazing job on it, but it also gives you a real understanding of why topsoil is so important. And they have great visuals and graphics and things that we can't really do on a podcast, but I highly recommend it, and it'll give you a good understanding. And there are, Matt, like 30, 40 different activities you can engage in as a farmer, as a rancher, that contribute to that. So that's why it's not just one thing. It's the combination of all the activities.
So Matt, you are founder and sixth generation cattle rancher. You are the founder of SunFed Ranch. My goodness, amazing, amazing family history. And dare I say, at the helm of really the first meat brand I've ever thought, hey, this stands for something. This is worth me making sure that I'm seeking it out, even paying more money. I told you before the show, I just bought like $40 worth of ground beef for my children, and it was a curbside or like a click and collect type of order. And you know how it says accept substitutions, and you can uncheck that, and I uncheck it when I'm ordering the SunFed Ranch beef. So it's kind of a fangirl moment for me too, to meet you, and because I've been serving SunFed Ranch beef in my home to my two boys, myself, my husband, gosh, for about we've been exclusive SunFed Ranch beef for at least 8 months, if not longer. And the way it was kind of a happy accident. I got a substitution when I ordered a different brand of your brand. And that's how I became brand loyal. So with that, I want to welcome you to the mic for self-introductions. And just to emphasize to folks, this is, sixth generation cattle ranching in America, no easy feat.
Well, thank you. And thank you for having me and having all of us on to visit with you. A smart shopper moment for everyone to note. Once you have been substituted SunFed Ranch, then uncheck the substitutions on your click and collect purchase. So everybody write that one down.
All right.
It's fortunate for me to be in a position for generations with my family, since we stopped the wagon off the Oregon Trail in Oregon and Northern California, to have been in a position to do something we love. And for me, as a sixth generation working with my father, who's on the ranch every day and has been throughout his entire life, to be in a position to allow my children, Luke and Colin, 7 and 5.5, to be in a position to hopefully be the 7th. And so that is it's something that drives us at SunFed, but drives us from our history. I think you've had the opportunity to meet Ashley and to meet Trip. And as ranchers, when we started the business, this business, which is the branded product business, about 12 years ago, quickly realized we can do everything right on the ranch. We can have neighbors that we work with who do everything right. But if we can't find a voice for that from people who understand how to give voice to what are inherently good activities, then there isn't a way to help other people who, like my wife and I, want to serve the right kind of food to our children. That opportunity just never develops. And so for you, who I've never met, to be able to say that you had a happy accident and it led to that being part of your regular routine, that brings these things full circle and makes the investment of time and effort and frankly money to take away from the ranch and put into the world, and you hope something comes back. So it's really exciting to see that occur.
Yeah, it did. It was a full circle moment for sure with those efforts, because it was, the story that's told even on package, and then that's enriched with your beautiful website. So it turned me into very loyal shopper and household. And I've got a middle school boy and a high school boy, and we live in Indiana. We eat plenty of beef here at the Taylor home. So but let's go back to that question I just asked Ashley. What is regenerative agriculture?
Regenerative, I think, is the term the consumer and the trade maybe is kicking around. Mm-hmm. You would never hear my dad sit at the coffee shop with his buddies and say, "Hey, Bob, what regenerative activity did you do today?" Yeah. Right. I think the frame for a rancher farmer to think about that, and really that's what we view. So we are grass farmers on a series of acres. hundreds of thousands on its way to millions that are part of the system that we're assembling to be able to service more broadly. And we're doing that in a way that encourages our grasses that we grow to improve soil, and the cattle to come along and be a part of recycling nutrients in a way that doesn't require us to use the same level of fossil fuels. Because when you think about, you're either adding to your land in a successive and progressive way, or you're mining the nutrients out of the land in such a way that you have to replenish them with what would be a less natural means. And so we envision the livestock are really key to that, because they eat, they digest, they do their thing, and that allows a cycle to be continued that allows for improvement. And so for us to be in a position to have fewer inputs because we're using the livestock to manage and consume something that you and I aren't going to eat, which is a series of blades of grass, and turn it into something that we can, which is lean, healthy protein. That's what we do. And when my mom came up with the name SunFed Ranch, she was really speaking to the fact that this business is driven by the millions of tiny solar panels, just like the ones that you see right back here on the poster of our ranch in Los Molinos, that are capturing the sun's energy, converting that with the nutrients that we put into the ground, and turning that over time into something that people can eat and feel good about feeding their kids.
I love that your mom named it too. That's amazing. So let's talk a little bit about, so first, let's set the stage of understanding here. 100% of your beef is raised in the USA.
Correct. Absolutely. And that's important for us at SunFed, because we're trying to benefit the people that are closest to home.
And I can say, as a shopper, I've been a little confused when I see beef products or other meat products, not just beef. I live in Indiana. We produce a ton of pork, and at Costco, they're trying to sell me bacon that was raised in Australia. I'm like, what is this? And then as I did a little bit more research, I was realizing maybe this is a bigger issue than I realized. So I want to give you a little bit of microphone time here just to speak, from the heart and with all the insight you have. I know that you've done a lot of leadership, even with the Cattlemen's Association. So help people understand why it's important as a shopper here in the United States to make sure that we are buying USA raised, grown, processed beef.
You're a shopper at a higher level than most, and if you're confused, then I think that can lead us to a natural assumption around what the average shopping cart pusher is feeling in a world where there's a lot of messaging around these things. And so, of course, I have very biased reasons to be pro-U.S. agriculture, pro-U.S. beef. But what I think really is important is the idea that within the grocery store, when you're walking the aisles, it's very easy to be misled or allowed, maybe not objectively misled, but allowed to make an assumption that maybe isn't accurate around what the source of a number of things are. And so you have to kind of read the fine print. And if not, then grass-fed beef is inherently a different product, irrespective of where it's sourced. But you don't get the benefit of providing that the lifeline to the farmer here. You don't get the benefit of reducing the food miles to come 25,000 miles on a boat from Australia. And you don't get the benefit of seeing those dollars recycle in rural communities that frankly, as you know, can use the help.
Yeah. And Lori, just to add one thing here, I think that if, we have 100% American on our package, so we try and scream that we're domestic. And
Right.
I think most brands that are domestic do try and scream it. You do have to read the fine print, because there's some rules on, hey, if it's processed here, sometimes they can make an American claim, even if the beef is from here. I'm sad to say, but it's true. Most grass-fed beef is not domestic. Look for the strong call out to American. And then, like I said, SunFed is, and there are other brands too. We're not the only one that's domestic. There definitely are others. But if
you're not saying it, there's probably a reason why.
Really screaming it, then you probably aren't. So I think that that's something for someone to look for.
Yeah, I agree. Thank you for sharing that, Ashley. And I think it just, just creates this climate of, I don't know if we want to, one of our objectives at the Produce Moms is to, push on the industry to be more transparent, frankly, increase that consumer trust in the work that we're doing, and to have something like being able to say, oh, product of the USA, when it was just
Right.
processed here, that feels sneaky to me.
It is sneaky. It really is. And yeah, but like I think, and you'll see even like 100% American beef on some of our stuff that has like has a parsley flake that we're not 100% sure where it's from. So we have to say beef, but like all of our beef is domestic. And there are other great brands out there too that we've just been fortunate enough to have a little bit of a megaphone with SunFed, whereas other brands have not. So, but yes, if it's important to you, really look for that call out. And also as it relates to grass fed, look for 100% grass fed or grass fed and grass finished, which is confusing to a lot of people, like what's grass finished, which is why we say 100% grass fed, because we think that the consumer understands that better than grass finished. So
explain the difference, Matt. I mean, you're the guy with the cowboy hat on.
Sure. Yeah, not just a hat rack, by the way. I think the key around grass fed and having it be a fully grass fed product is that you have a change. People say you are what you eat. The cattle are the same way. The diet that they eat conveys into the fat. It conveys into the muscle. It conveys into the nutrients, macro and micro, that come from that source. And there are plenty of great folks who raise cattle different ways. But I think the specific benefits that we're excited about are that they come from the source of feed in the cattle, and it's that it happens throughout their entire life. So when you change your diet, if I suddenly start drinking a bunch of Cokes and that's all I drink, then I'm going to show that probably here and probably here. And similarly, when we kick these cattle to a 75,000 calorie a day diet that's derivative largely of corn in the feedlot, which would be kind of the standard diet, then their bodies change too. And it creates what today is the choice, right? The choice around grass-fed throughout their entire life, or grass-fed. Many cattle are grass-fed for a portion of their life, but then when that diet changes, a lot of the health benefits change, and a lot of the the idea of the animal out on the side hill changes, because those cattle are typically fed in a pen at that point in their lives.
It is a really good analogy to humans too. Like it doesn't take that long for your health to decline if you start eating really poorly.
Yeah, and I'm just even thinking about when I've changed my dog Duke's dog food. Like I did it one time. It didn't, and he his hair started falling out. Like, he was shedding more. He wasn't falling out, but he was shedding more. And then, he was having all this like digestion issues. And I'm like, he's a Great Dane. I'm not cleaning that up in the house. So I just went back to like his original food, even though I was told by someone that, he needs to have a different type of food, And
if you think about it, it's like the cattle are either eating potato chips or they're eating a salad. And it's literally that simple in terms of, you think of those health benefits that then come through to us, like grass-fed beef has a much better balance of omega-3s and omega-6s. We had our beef tested, and the omega-3s were as good as salmon. And I mean, even I was surprised that they were that good. It's leaner in the steak aisle, if that's something you care about. Although the fat in grass-fed beef is really good. So I don't really care as much about that, but just way more vitamins, way more minerals. They've been eating salad their whole life, and they've been eating vegetables their whole life versus eating chips, corn chips. And that comes through.
Matt, when it's marketed as 100% grass fed, is there anything else that they're getting, or is it literally just grass that they eat?
It's a forage diet, not something that's coming from it's energy, right? So what is the number one ingredient in a lot of sweet items? Corn syrup, because it's sweet. It gives you a lot of energy. That energy turns into my body fat.
Yeah.
And so a leaner input leads to kind of the leaner output.
Yeah.
And when we talk about grass and grass feeding, I like to break one kind of assumption. I have a least favorite question, which Ashley's shocked as I've waited this long to bring up. I can't believe you which is, what kind of grass do the cattle eat? With the idea that this is the 18th green at Pebble Beach, and it's one kind of grass and it's mowed. This is a growing salad bar of living roots, right? Yeah. And that gets back to that regenerative piece, that it is site specific, right? Yeah. We don't have the same grass on the same seasonality in Northern California that we would have in Idaho or Florida. That everything fits within its natural context and its environmental context. And it really is why grass finishing and the needs of the environment and the health of the soil are so compatible, because you're fitting into the context of the environment around you rather than trying to force it into a particular set of outcomes. And so there could be a cornucopia of 30 times of grass and clover and those kind of things that are part of the diet. And the cattle, when given those choices, they're way more intuitive about their diet than people are. Yeah. They kind of know what they need. Yes. And they don't just go to the ice cream end of the all-you-can-eat salad bar and hang out around there. They kind of graze, to use a term purposefully, their way through their nutritional needs in a much more intelligent way than people, frankly.
All right, so let's talk about some of these other labels, and I think both of you, Matt and Ashley, can both speak to this. I mean, as we want to use this episode as a way where when people who are with us today tuning in, we want them to have a heightened sense of clarity the next time they're shopping in the meat department. All right. So all these different labels that you've seen, I've pulled a few of them here in the show notes. I've got grass-fed, grass-finished. I know we've talked about both of those. USA grown, antibiotic free, humanely raised. I know there's others, but let's just start with those. Ashley, we'll start with you, CMO. I mean, you're probably deciding, you're probably a thought leader in what gets on the package and what doesn't,
It's really hard because we have a very small space. So I am very stringent about what goes on there and what doesn't. And there's a lot more that we could say that isn't on there, which is why you have to go to the website, because we're limited in the space. But, when I talk with consumers and they tell me what's important, then that comes back to the package. So for us, we have a brand basis around 100%. So I like to say, we're 100% American. So we're 100% humanely raised. So where that comes from for us is our protocols that were referenced earlier. And so we have affidavits that we have to submit and audits that we have to go through to enable to make that claim. Sustainably raised, same thing, affidavits and things that we submit that talk about how we treat the land. Sustainability and regenerative they're interrelated, but they are different. Mm-hmm. So we have a regenerative claim coming on our package in the next 6 weeks, which is new. But we'd always had sustainability, and sustainability can be broader. It can be about the human community too, so that it can incorporate, jobs and things of that nature in your rural community, but it also incorporates the earth. So sustainability is, I'd say, mucky. Don't you agree, Matt? It's like a kind of a mucky term.
It's hard. It's just hard to put a single finger on because it is a broadly used term.
And then, pasture raised that one's a little more straightforward. Like our cattle are always on pasture all the time, which is why we're 100% pasture raised, which means no confinements, no feedlot. That one's actually pretty defined. So that is another thing that you can look for in a package is 100% pasture raised. Again, we use the 100% as there's no bull. Yeah, this is what it is. And, I don't know where, if you can just say generally, but I mean, again, we're very stringent on trying to show that this is what we do. So those are, and like things like when you look at eggs, there's all sorts of claims. Like, again, there's a big difference between cage free and free range, right? And so, free range is probably equivalent to pasture raised if you're more familiar with egg claims. Mm-hmm. So those are our big ones that we talk about. And again, it's confusing. So
it can be. I mean, and it can feel overwhelming, and it feels like there's so many different causes that you can get behind. But one of my biggest takeaways, even from listening to all three of you talk today, it's like all of these values kind of feed into the other values. It feels like a very circular system. And if someone were to ask me today how to describe regenerative agriculture, I think I would probably use that circular, comparative or like I am with my hands right now. It's like, but it's like, can you really have one component without the other? I feel like you probably can't, if you're going to have a true system of regenerative farming. But no, it's a fascinating conversation. So you mentioned, Ashley, that you have a label coming on to, so this is where I do get confused still. So you have a label coming onto the package that says regenerative.
Supports regenerative agriculture. And it just talks about that we engage in practices that support regenerative agriculture. We ranch on over 1 million acres, and some of that acreage is certified regenerative, but not all of it is, because we work with different ranching partners, and it's a long process. But everything we do, even with our partner ranchers, supports regenerative activities. But like I said, not 100% of our ranches are all certified regenerative through the third party. We've got I don't know, like 30-40% or something that are, but yeah, so that's coming on because it's a little different than sustainable, and it's a word that's come into the consumer ecosystem in the last 2 years. I mean, it's funny because I talked to people about it in 2020 and 2021, and there was very little knowledge of it. And now it's different. And, one of the things I think that's, important for retailers to understand is that younger consumers, so millennials and Gen Zers, really value different things than older consumers. And when you ask them what quality is, and you ask them what premium is, and you ask them what they want these types of attributes. They do not want prime beef. And that is something that I think a lot of meat managers struggle with, because they've been raised a certain way. Like, they've been told that that's the best, that's the highest quality, but whatever
Sure.
it is. And that does not translate to, people under 40. And I would say even the younger it's really, these households with children. And so I think the way we think about beef and we think about any type of protein, the younger consumer wants more alignment with their values, and activist brands, all those things, right? They want more alignment with that than they care about marbling or something. So
I don't know, but a good marbled steak does taste good. So Matt, tell us more about that, because I always feel like when I'm at the meat counter, like the marbled New York strip is the one I want to buy. So help people understand like how you can have such a delicious steak that maybe doesn't have that marbling.
Yeah, well, it kind of comes back to what we talked about before around it's what the cattle eat. It's the length of time you allow them to do that. You can get big or get develop intermuscular fat if you eat salad. You just got to do enough of it over enough time, right? And do it in an intentional way.
Yeah.
And so there's a difference between cattle that stand around in a field and then suddenly become grass-fed beef, and it's sort of accidental or arbitrary. And then there's a difference to having a program, a plan, again, starting with the soil, leading to the kind of forages that are there, and then managing around harvest timing so that you're picking, just like you don't pick a tomato when it's green and make a good sauce, you have to get the cattle to the right place. Yeah. And so it's another reason why the U.S. system is smaller, being developed, but probably providing the highest quality grass-fed in the world.
Yes.
Because the people doing it here are doing it much more intentionally. If you're in Australia or Uruguay and the system is predicated on grass, it's just what you do, but you're not really thinking that hard.
Yeah.
Here, we're trying to convert what is a system heavily controlled by 4 packers, each of whom, by the way, have meaningful operating assets in the United States and out. Yeah. And so they're involved in the international trade within beef in a meaningful way. They're servicing that market that Ashley described, the choice prime. It's basically it's commoditized, and it's determined that all measure of quality is set by USDA, and that's just not the way the consumer is thinking today. Right? Of course, you want a marbled steak, and you deserve one. Yeah. Me too. I don't want to raise one, sell one that I don't want to eat myself. but it doesn't have to be a choice of, is it humanely raised or tasty?
Yeah, definitely not. And I think our grass-fed beef, the flavor of grass-fed comes from the meat, not the fat. So I've done blind taste tests in my home. These are things I do for fun, where
It's fun.
I cooked up a steak and, did some identifier on the bottom and then kind of mixed them up and then tasted it. And I put a score on it. And I actually, and my husband, we both preferred the grass fed. And so, and after the show, I'll tell you where you can buy one of our amazing steaks in Southern California. I don't want to mention the retailer on the show because that's not fair to all of them. But I will let you know. But I don't think you need as much marbling in a grass fed steak to get amazing flavor. But we also do have prime grass fed cattle. That, like Matt said, it's super intentional. I'm so impressed with our ranching operations, and they have they're on this calorie of a diet, eating this type of forage, so they can gain the weight they need. That it isn't just terrible, So, and I even think SunFed has progressed signitigantly since I started 4 years ago. In that respect, the quality is significantly better than it was 4 years ago. By again, the effort of Matt and the ranching team, it's significantly better beef than it was. And yeah, I love our beef, and I'm a pretty hardcore food snob.
It's true. We're creating a new return to the old days where most beef in the United States was grass-fed. There was a period of time, nearly 100 years, where that really kind of fell off, and the more commoditized production really became the driver of scale and cost. And there's a lot of reasons why that is very efficient. And so now there's a smaller group of people in the United States saying, we can do this in a more artisanal way. We're not doing exactly like Granddad did, but we're bringing some of those things back and doing it at quality and a scale. And ultimately, the other thing that matters is it has to be cost approachable, which is the other reason we're really excited to bring together the hot dog and hamburger into the business, because we're not feeding our kids fillets. Our kids eat like other kids. They eat hot dogs. Let's make it a good one. They eat burgers. Let's make it a good one. And if you're making lasagna, tacos, anything that is ground beef driven, you're in a sense disguising that additional nutrition within something that they'd be eating anyway.
Yeah, no, my kids are hilarious. We have a burger that's like a 5.3 ounce burger that we make, and that SunFed makes, and it's just beef. Versus when I make this fancy patty and all that stuff, they're like, Mom, when are we going to get the SunFed Ranch beef burgers? When are you going to go get those? Because they're a little seasonal right now. They'll be year round next year, I'm sure, but they're coming back in April. And even our frozen burger is amazing. And one of the things that I learned, this is a fun chef tip, is that we have a chef ambassador. He's a Michelin-starred chef, and he is like, you don't want to have any cracks around the edge of the burger, because then the juice leaches out the fat. And so when we actually produce them in a plant where we just stamp out the beef, you don't get that. And so they're really juicy and they're really good. And I have two kids, 10 and 7. Both of them are under 60 pounds. They both will eat the entire 5.3 ounce burger completely. And they won't eat, if I made that, they would not eat it, but they'll eat the SunFed one. So
that's a third of a pound for those of you counting at home.
Yeah. A third of a pound.
My son's going to want 2 servings. I've got a 15-year-old who's 6'6" right now. So.
Oh, Lord.
Yeah. You may want to be looking for the bulk pack.
Yeah.
Let's talk about how, I don't know if it's my patriot mindset or I'm so pro-American ag, but I feel like USA beef is world renowned. I feel like there has to be an export market demand. Just listening to you talk, help me understand if my intuition is accurate here. Or do you guys, Matt, what's your point of view on that? I mean, you've 6th generation with your family, your family farm, your brand SunFed Ranch, but you also supported the regulatory side and the growth of USA beef with your Cattlemen's Association leadership in years past. So help me and those of us with us understand just the superiority of USA beef. if there is one, or if it's just me being, super patriot here, pro-American ag.
Fortunately, two things can both be right at the same time. So you can both be a patriot, and U.S. beef can be awesome because they both are true. And so, yeah, I did spend some time working with the Cattlemen's Association and closely with, Beef It's What's for Dinner, really supporting U.S. And that involved not just here in the United States, but also all around the world. If you think about and people forget, right, that you eat a steak or you eat a short rib or you eat a burger. And then people say, hey, Matt, do you have the, New York's? I'm like, all of our cattle have all of the pieces, right? And that's a reality of the business. Yeah. We don't grow them by the piece, but we sell them by the piece. More of a bovine chop shop sort of a situation. And so there are places around the world that prefer some of the items that the United States does not prefer. And so there is, livers go to Egypt, short rib for shabu shabu goes to Korea. There's high-end shoppers all over the world that really like U.S. beef, both grass-fed, grain-fed. But ultimately, in terms of making the market for the farmer, it is the responsibility of those of us who are not just on the farming side, but in the wholesale side and reaching out to people who are shoppers to find the highest value for a lot of those items. And that makes the other pieces that we do consume here, especially if you're thinking the family, the hot dog, again, that level more approachable and affordable.
Stick around for more with Matt, Trip, and Ashley of Grass-Fed Foods and SunFed Ranch. The Produce Moms is proud to be the first and currently only B Corp certified influencer brand in the world. What does this mean? It means we view our work as a force for good, a good for the community, a good for our employees, for all of our stakeholders and the environment. Your participation in the Produce Moms community empowers all that we do. Please send me an email if you have any feedback or suggestions for this show or the Produce Moms brand overall. I believe that together we can get more fruits and vegetables on every table and make the world a better place. We're here with Matt, Trip, and Ashley of SunFed Ranch and Grass-Fed Foods. Let's talk about Teton a little bit, because from the three guests today on the show, you probably have the strongest perspective as it relates to that brand under the Grass-Fed Foods portfolio. And I know from pre-show dialogue that child nutrition is such a passion of yours. So tell us a little bit more about Teton.
When I started to put together these two companies, part of it was I needed the tools to help change the micronutrient content that at-risk groups face today. And if you think of folks that are at both edges of that age spectrum, 50 plus, have a different concern about their health, and food plays a role, but so did children. And some of the things that were shocking to me was 1 out of 5 children in the United States are clinically obese. And if you think about that for a second, it's 1 out of 5, that's 15 million children clinically obese. 80% of them end up getting type 2 diabetes. That number, and this is an NIH study, not a TRIP study. So NIH study says that in 20 years, it'll be 1 in 2 children. 1 in 2. A lifetime of type 2 diabetes for a child, 1 in 2 of them, is devastating to the nation. But more so, it's devastating to the 1 in 2 children. That is unacceptable for a nation of our caliber. To say that's okay is not okay to me. So Teton, specifically, a company that makes hot dogs and hamburgers and sausages, things that kids eat. The ability to go in and change what are relatively, most parents would say, hot dogs and hamburgers and sausages aren't high on the list for kids.
I mean, that's exactly what I was going to say. And I put that in my pre-show notes. It's like, here we have someone with this burning passion for child nutrition, and the products aren't exactly what you would, hot dogs are not at the top of the list when you think I'm going to feed my kid a nutritious, healthy food. So I cannot wait to hear more about this.
So here's what we've done. And look, I'm a grandfather. I have 3 grandchildren. I have another one coming in March. And so it is something that's important to me. It's a legacy I'd like to be able to say at some point, hey, that's a real thing that we did. So we are launching in March a hot dog, a hamburger, a meatball, and a mini corn dog. 4 products for kids that has vegetables blended into the grass-fed beef, and it lowers the sodium 50%. It lowers the saturated fat 38%. It's sugar-free. It's no antibiotic, and it's got vegetables. As a parent, or in my case, a grandparent, that's a home run in feeding children.
Especially if it tastes good, which I'm assuming it wouldn't be coming to market if it didn't.
It tastes like a great hot dog and a great hamburger. In fact, we're working with school districts and underwriting the cost to have them be able to serve products like this to kids that are in school, public schools across the country, K through 12, as a way, because for some kids, especially in certain areas, that's the best meal they're having. And we need to work hard as a nation to make sure that if that's their meal, then it's the best one we can provide.
So you said that's coming
March.
Just a few months, and not even a few months, like a few weeks.
It'll be launched at the Meat Industries annual show in Dallas. And then as fast as smart grocers and restaurateurs put that product on their menus and in their stores, that's when America can get that product.
So Teton Waters Ranch and SunFed Ranch are now sister companies under the Grass-Fed Foods umbrella. Are there any other companies or brands within that portfolio right now, or is it those 2 companies are the primary ones?
Those are the 2 we're starting with.
Well, and I'm assuming, and again, I know Matt's going to be able to share a lot on this too, Trip, but the name is very intentional, Grass-Fed Foods. Why don't you share a little bit more about that label in particular? Because grass-fed, I mean, I can tell you from a shopper's point of view, and I'm a pretty savvy shopper. I've worked in ag, at mostly on the sales, marketing, communication side, but almost 20 years now. So a lot of the food labeling doesn't confuse me, but I am admittedly like grass-fed, grass-finished, pasture-raised, certified regenerative. Those are all things where it's like, okay, where do we begin? And what is the one thing that you want moms like me in the grocery store to know when they see these brands at point of sale?
I'd like them to know that if we're feeding them to our kids, they should feel confident feeding them to theirs or to their family. But you talk about something that's shared across all socioeconomic levels, is a concern over, do the labels mean what you think they mean, or do they mean something else? And so I would encourage everyone to say, look, you need to check those out. The burden shouldn't be put on the consumer, but it is. And so we post, for example, our protocols, which are the rules on how we raise animals, how we treat the land, all the things that folks like Matt and his families and the other ranchers would do anyway, because it's their land. It's their name on the front of that fence post. And so they're going to do it the right way. But you can't count on that. And so we publish our protocols. We have a third party go double check that we're telling the truth.
That is so important right there, because I think a lot of claims are made that aren't third party validated.
And people take advantage, and it ruins it for everyone that does it right. So if you got on our website for either brand, you could read the protocols. You could read who's the third party certifier, someone that says they don't get paid other than for their travel. So they're not making any money. They have to audit it, make sure it's done correctly. And so those things are important. It does put a lot of burden on a consumer, and they can't do that about everything that they buy. But some things are more important than others in the diet. And the center of the plate is important. They need to check on that.
I feel the same way about really all of those perimeter fresh agricultural commodities that we're buying. Matt's got this family history as a 6th generation cattle rancher who's raising, God willing, the 7th generation, leadership of SunFed Ranch. But from your point of view, it's been a lot of strategy and marketing. And that's been your real big impact to the ag community and industry. So why do you think that these values of agriculture, like, the things that you're getting certified or the regenerative agriculture practices, what makes that worthy of being on the label? When did that become a marketing characteristic that helps sell your product?
It became important to me as a marketer because it became important to consumers. When consumers said, I don't want a commodity anymore. When they said a commodity is a non-differentiated product. And they suddenly said, yeah, but certain products, I want to have them be more important. I want to add the word organic because it meant something, or whatever the claim was. And so once that became something that as a business person, you could say, if I do that, I'm better than the competition. I charge more money. It costs me more money. And so once that became a thing, and that was about 1995-ish, when those things started to become more plentiful. You could go to a grocery store, maybe only find a little bit, but it was there. Now today, it's not a little bit. It's everywhere. And so today, not to be listening to a consumer is foolish. And there are consumers, whether it's in dairy or produce or you name the category, and they're saying, I want those claims. I want them to be real. And that's only getting bigger every day. If we looked at a certain generation today versus an older generation today, one of them likes the claims and the other one demands the claims. And that's what the progressive grocers and restaurateurs are listening to. That younger group will pass by that restaurant or grocery store if items like this are not in there.
I read something recently how a modern day brand is an activist brand. It's a brand that stands for something that's raising the standard for not only themselves continuously, but their entire competitive set in the food and beverage industry or whatever, industry we're evaluating is. And I could not agree with that more. I thought it was so spot on.
Well, it is. Consumers are looking at their values and saying the things I buy and the places I go have to reflect them or they're not going. That's at a level that is much higher than it was in the past.
So Ashley, you're a food marketer. I consider myself a food marketer. All these lovely attributes are important, but really with food, the number one attribute is, does it taste good? So what do you have to share with our audience as it relates to that key characteristic, that paramount characteristic when it comes to our food choices?
Well, I think that there is, I would call it almost a myth at this point out there that grass-fed beef does not taste good. So we did a survey of, again, 1,200 people, and we asked them, does grass-fed beef taste good? And the resounding answer was yes. And so I think perhaps 10 years ago, maybe even 7 or 8 years ago, didn't taste as good. But, what we do at SunFed is with Matt's work on the ranching team and just very much pay attention to what they're eating to make sure it does taste good. And I know better than anyone, if it doesn't taste good, people are not coming back to buy it, which is why actually when you look at our advertising and marketing, you'll see, yes, we show the romance of the cattle, we show the romance of the ranch, and that's very important. And that's our DNA, but we also show food. And we show pictures of food porn, as I like to say, because that is what's really enticing. And it's really funny. We always do our marketing calls. And after I get off, I'm like, I am so hungry. Like, I just want a steak or a burger, because it is very enticing. And food, it's an animal instinct, right? And us to eat. And so it has to taste good. It has to even appeal to you on the package as well. Otherwise, why are you going to buy it? So
the Produce Moms podcast will be right back. The Produce Moms is always accepting new brand partners. If you have a fruit or a vegetable product, or a product that has the same integrity and values of fresh produce, we want to help you. Visit theproducemoms.com, and in the footer of our homepage, please click on the Work With Us link. We look forward to supporting you. I know you've been working tirelessly on the new product launch, but a great opportunity for us to have a little bit of fun here with the cultural side of what hot dogs are, right? Okay, so hot dog, this or that. 4th of July barbecue or baseball game?
Baseball game.
Mustard or ketchup?
Mustard.
Would you like relish or would you like cheese sauce?
Cheese sauce.
Coney or cheese sauce?
Coney.
Wheat bun or white bun?
White bun. I'm older.
All right. And let's see. Last one. Teton Water's original hot dog or the new hot dog with the veggies and all the hidden goodies?
So Teton taste buds, the one for kids, tastes the same as the other one. It just has better ingredients.
Okay, so there's no this or that. It's just a qualifier of you choose, folks, because they're both good choices. All right, thanks for playing. You're at a white tablecloth steakhouse. You've got 2 vegetable sides that you can order with your dinner. All right, so Ashley, what are you choosing?
Oh, mashed potatoes. I guess, is that technically a vegetable? Some form of
Yes!
vegetable.
Are you kidding?
I always think of it as starch.
Yes.
Potatoes for sure, and then I love steakhouse salad. It's like I'm going to maybe go for a wedge, which is like a classic
Perfect.
steakhouse item.
All right, Matt. You're at a white tablecloth, your favorite steakhouse in America. You get 2 veggie sides. What are you picking?
2 sides. So probably a creamed spinach. Creamed spinach, always good. I am partial to the wedge as well if I'm getting a salad. So something you can really dig your teeth
Oh,
into.
you're going for a potato. You're going.
But I did grow up in potato country, so always a good choice.
Yeah.
All right, you got a pound of SunFed Ranch ground beef in your fridge. You making tacos or spaghetti sauce?
I'm making meatballs.
That wasn't an option, but okay, you can go rogue. That works.
I'm Italian, so I'm making meatballs.
I love it. All right, Matt.
The kids are all about taco meat right now.
Yeah.
So we are crumbling, we are cooking, and we are sprinkling some taco seasoning.
Yeah.
And they won't, embarrassingly, they don't prefer hamburger, but they love taco meat. So that's what's happening in our house.
I love it. All right, so let's go cut a meat. All right, we'll do a few of them. All right, Ashley, are you ordering a ribeye or a fillet?
I'm ordering a fillet for sure.
All right, Matt, sixth generation cattle rancher, are you ordering a ribeye or a fillet?
I am ordering a ribeye. I'm ordering a ribeye. My wife probably a fillet. And if they have short ribs on the menu, since we're not answering the questions in the way they're asked, if there's short ribs on the menu, I'm getting that because I can't cook them myself at home. So it's a point of personal improvement for me down the road.
Actually, I keep telling Matt that the SunFed Ranch website has a phenomenal short rib recipe, and most of our recipes are I've tested and tried them, and this one's my own personal adaptation, and I'm gonna cook it for Matt. So.
But do check out there because people do question. You're like, oh, grass-fed beef, is it different? Should I cook it different? And there are a few tips to make sure that the differences in consistency with a little bit of leanness. You treat it slightly differently, you get a much better result.
Yeah. Yes. It doesn't need to be cooked as long.
There you go. That's the biggest one.
Yeah.
And a little olive oil goes a long way.
Yeah.
That was a lot of fun. All right. I love doing that. Now, I do also have to ask, when you order your steaks or when you cook them at home, are you like team medium rare or where do you fall like with the steak temperature? For
me, I'm a medium rare depending on the place, but medium to medium rare.
I'm always medium rare.
And you're always right.
I agree. All right. So there you have it. Anyone who's dined with me, who's gotten the dirty look when you order your steak, anything above medium rare, now you know why. All right. Okay. Thank you for setting that record straight. So we pulled a couple headlines here. These are headlines for the beef and the cattle world. All right. So we actually went to beefmagazine.com. The very first time anyone at the Produce Mom says visited beefmagazine.com. But look for beef prices to rise in 2023 and 2024. Subheadline, in part because of the drought in Texas, is forcing ranchers to send more cows to slaughter. So either one of you want to take that one?
we watch the cattle market like most people watch the stock market. So, and technically it is a stock market. There are a lot of realities around that seasonality that exists within livestock, and we're in California. We've had our own struggles with drought, but the nation has experienced that, and the herd of cattle in the country matches to the grass growing conditions around the country. And so that reflects the reality that the cow herd is diminished. It's not possible to continue to feed your stock if you don't have the right kind of forage base around you. So we're part of that bigger industry. We manage our business a little differently. We run lighter, so we have a little more insurance in our grass, so to speak, and so we haven't been directly impacted, but it makes a difference. And that expectation I would be very much in line with, in addition to the idea that everything else has gotten so darn expensive, and food, meat, very much in line with all of that. It's I'll give you one quick example. When we move a load of cattle, 45,000 pounds at a time, we were paying $3.50 per mile to move a load 2 years ago, and now we're just shy of $7. So just that one thing doubled in price.
Well, and that is an expense that is put on the back of the ranchers. That's your expense to pay. And so we have another headline about let's just go ahead. Why hold? All right, this one's from the New York Times. We'll keep the mic with you, and then Ashley, if you want to share anything, by all means. All right, New York Times: record beef prices, but ranchers aren't cashing in.
As a rancher, obviously, I don't prefer that headline. But the reality is there are two markets. There is a market for beef, and there is a market for livestock. And in large part, the two of them have relationships, but they're not fully aligned. And so the four big beef packers over the last 2 years have made a phenomenal amount of money buying cattle, selling meat in elevated markets. And the only part of that gets passed through to the rancher is the part that they write the check for when the cattle get to the plant. So not complaining, because that's the way the system is structured largely in the commodity business. It's one of the reasons that my family and Trip mentioned it earlier, that we work with families. We provide a more consistent approach with the ranchers we work with. So we know we're asking them to do extra things. We're asking them to follow a protocol, and we're paying a premium to market at all times because it's extra work. It should be compensated. And without it, we want to bring more people into the fold.
Our ranchers and our ranching partners 100% make more money with us than they would in the commodity beef system, which is, I think, one of the reasons why, if you really go back to the core of it and you talk to Matt and Chris, and when I came here, they were excited about regenerative and sustainability and like that, but it was like, I can continue ranching in this system. Sure. I'm not able to continue ranching and paying bills in the commodity system anymore, especially as a California rancher. I mean, absolutely. It's like, so.
All right, horn flies. You know anything about these horn flies? It was quite the dramatized headline. Here it is. Horn flies are the most damaging external parasite of cattle in the United States.
When the cattle are out in a natural environment, they are subject to an environment. So if you've ever walked outside at a barbecue right next to the lake, right after the mosquitoes hatched, you have an external parasite, in this case a mosquito, and you spend a lot of time doing that. So that creates a lot of, when there's an external parasite, just like for people, it creates a lot of extra worry, creates a lot of extra activity. You're shaking, you're wagging your tail, you're doing the things to try to clear yourself up. And so it's one of the things we manage in that natural lifestyle. A lot of our production is organic, so we don't use a lot of heavy chemical-based sort of antiparasitics, but we use what we call kind of more homeopathic methods, many of which are very efficacious, but they're not quite the same as coming in with the can of Raid and putting it into it all at once.
We'll start with you, Ashley, on this one.
Okay.
Texas A&M University Kingsville is working to reduce the environmental impact of cattle. a major source of greenhouse gas emissions in the U.S. You knew I wasn't going to do this podcast without bringing up this topic. So
I am happy to hear anyone working to reduce greenhouse emission from cattle. It's a good thing. And Texas A&M, along with other universities, are experimenting with the cattle's diet in order to basically reduce the burping. People like methane gas, you think it's the other end, but it's actually the mouth. And so anyone, and that really pertains specifically to feedlot environments where they're, having a lot of the same thing. And so they're experimenting with different feeds in order to reduce that. But the reason why we engage in regenerative is it doesn't necessarily mean that the cattle don't emit anything. But what happens is those emissions are sequestered into the soil through the natural process, and they're running around and, they poop on the ground and then they stomp it into the ground, and then that, the ground absorbs that fertilizer, and then it all has to do with the root system, and then the roots sequester the carbon, and that's the whole process. So in a regenerative environment, the cattle are still engaging in those behaviors, but it's sequestered versus a feedlot environment where it isn't. But anything to me is, it is true. I do believe that the impact of it has been greatly perhaps overstated, exaggerated. I mean, you see this data diced so many different ways, and I'm a marketer and I know how to play with data and make it say. So I do think the general sort of, although I feel like it's calmed down recently, it was a lot more, maybe 18 months, even 2 years ago, where I feel like you were getting hit every day with how bad it is. And so I do think it's been exaggerated, and you can look at it a lot of different ways. But still, I think any effort in that arena is a good one, no matter who's doing it.
I'd agree that the important thing to look at in any of those scenarios is again context. So what is the system that supports the way that an animal is raised, a car is driven, yes, a Tesla battery is built and disposed of? You have to look at the whole story, yeah, to understand the whole story, and yeah, it's important for all of us as intelligent humans to read all the way from the first page to the last, not just pick a page in the middle and say this is the whole story.
Gosh, it's been a great episode. We're going to go, and just say our goodbyes to all three of our wonderful guests. Gosh, Trip, you kicked this show off with your passion and sharing so much information about how the values of your food are really, that's the modern day brand strategy. And I love it, so it's just been a true pleasure to have you on the show today. And I want to welcome you for any closing remarks for our audience.
Well, Lori, thank you. Thanks for the time. And you play an important role, and I truly do appreciate it. The thing, and I was talking to Matt about his family and the generations that worked hard to get him to this moment. And the thing that compels me is there's people like Matt that we're not going to be able to get to in time. We've talked a lot about the consumer, but there's ranchers out there, there's farmers out there that are in desperate need of help. And products like this not just help consumers eat better, they help keep people on the land so they can do their work. They need a little more money for those premium products, the animals they raise, the produce they raise, and vegetables. And that's a compelling thing when it often gets glossed over. And I would say that for us, that is front and center. We have to help more of those people so they can do the important work to help the rest of the households across the country. But I thank you for your time.
Matt, closing remarks from the founder, the sixth generation cattle rancher, SunFed Ranch, the guy with the cowboy hat. We're glad you're here. It was a great episode.
Well, it was great to spend some time, and thank you for the opportunity. It's we are very small, grass-fed as a percentage of total meat. Beef in the United States is over $100 billion, and grass-fed is down around 1%. So there's a lot of opportunity to see that grow. As Ashley alluded to, it may not be everyone's choice all of the time, but there's lots of reasons for our family to be in a position to find the bridge to other families in a way that can be afforded. So I think if I can speak just personally, we started the business largely around the needs of our own family. And what has been great is with the help of a more professionalized team of people around us who help us see a bigger world, to see that it ultimately matters to the family on the eating end of the product, if it's ever going to matter to the family on the growing end of the cattle. And so that's really the bridge that we're seeking to build, and do so in a way that becomes meaningful. Because if the only thing we can sell is a filet mignon to a steakhouse for a business dinner, that's really not getting to the people, children, who are most important and who are the ones that are going to have the longest lifetime improvement over a better product going into their body.
I want to make sure that, Ashley, you have an opportunity for closing remarks and goodbye to our audience.
Lori, thank you so much for having us on the show. It's been a super fun conversation. Matt and I love to talk about this stuff, and we talk about it all the time. And my closing remarks would be, one thing we didn't talk about too much, but grass-fed beef tastes good. Yeah. And I encourage consumers that, or even buyers, if they're listening, right, to give it another shot. If you tried it 3 years ago, try it again. And we sometimes, we've talked a lot about the attributes, which of course are amazing, but you know what? If stuff doesn't taste good, you're not going to eat it and you're not going to repeat buy it. So my closing remarks would be, give it a try, give it a shot, and taste it and try it and see if you like it. Be open to it. And then, as a mother and I think, do be aware of the choices you're making. And the most powerful way for any consumer to vote is with their dollar. And so, be aware of the choices you're making and the food, that you're purchasing, and not just with grass-fed beef, but with other categories as well. Is, what does that mean? And of course, we don't always have the luxury to always pay top dollar every time. But, our hope with SunFed Ranch and grass-fed foods is that the merging of the two and the expansion and the scale will hopefully bring the cost down over time. We're definitely not there yet, but the goal is the democratization of grass-fed meats. And so just bringing something better to the consumer over the long term. So I encourage people to learn more, look more, and also if you're a little worried about the taste, don't be. Not at least for the SunFed products. They taste amazing.
Don't forget to subscribe to the Produce Moms podcast on Apple, Spotify, Amazon, and any preferred podcast platform. Check out the Produce Moms on Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram, TikTok, Twitter, and YouTube. Special thanks to everyone involved with the Produce Moms podcast, my amazing team. Stay tuned till next time. The number one question we get from our audience is, how can I get my kids to eat more fruits and vegetables? One way we can all do this is by making fresh produce fun. Check out our food art gallery and step-by-step guides by visiting theproducemoms.com and searching food art. Because come on, a penguin made of blueberries is just more fun than a bowl of blueberries.